Hey there, everybody. It's Wednesday, my dudes. Ooh. This is an entirely brand new blend of coffee that I've got here called Rum Toffee. I don't know what the actual coffee is, but the flavouring tastes nothing like rum or coffee, or toffee, but it does taste very coffee-ish. So, not too bad. Is anybody going to show up, I wonder? So I've got a few things to talk about today. I might not have had the notification go out, actually. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. I don't know. Anyway, so the Con+1 is an online convention that's going to be on November the 3rd. And that is organised by Becky and Jason, who are friends of mine. And I was wondering if anybody has any interest in me running a game or something like that for people, or me just sort of broadcasting or streaming during the Con+1 and directing people to different events that they should probably go and check out, because they usually have panels and things like that, which is quite interesting. Anybody who was on the Twitch, I think it was yesterday, with Greg Tito and the D&D news would have, whoever that person was who said hi to me, I was trying to get information from them about whether the Magic the Gathering setting is being integrated. Hey, Dragon Lord! Cool! Whether the Magic the Gathering universe is being integrated fully with the Planescape setting of D&D 5th edition and Dungeons & Dragons in general. Because I find that they're very, very vague on it. So what they're saying at the moment is that Magic the Gathering Ravnica can be played using the 5th edition rules as a world setting. What they're hedging around, what I'm not actually getting any concrete answers from them for, apart from one comment right at the start, which was you can play Magic the Gathering is coming to Dungeons and Dragons. But whether that was just marketing speech or whether it was some sort of, they're not really saying whether. Hey Fiona, they're not really saying whether you can play a game at like some sort of official D&D game, for instance, where you go from, say, Forgotten Realms, travel via spelljamming or through traveling between the different planes of existence, and then you end up in Ravnica or Mirrodin or New Phyrexia or Dominaria, whether these are actually legitimate worlds of Dungeons and Dragons now. I don't see why not, because we all know that, particularly in the Spelljammer setting, there's many spheres of existence that don't even get a mention or a setting book or any sort of resources. It's left for GMs to basically just use whatever we have, and so in that respect, nothing is sort of off limits from from Dungeons and Dragons, whereas the Magic the Gathering universe, in many ways, is a lot more limited, because the gameplay itself is just cards, and the cards have got to do with worlds that are already explored and storylines that are already existing in the sort of fluff text in the background. Whereas Dungeons and Dragons really lives in the fluff text, and the rules are basically secondary to everything that's going on. So it's the same sort of thing, but it's different. You could say that Magic the Gathering is more of a card war game than it is a role-playing game, which I don't think anybody would argue with. You don't really feel like you're taking on the role of whatever planeswalker or such that your cards are representing. In fact, you can pick and choose from the cards and the background stories and things, and if you try to piece it all together and the cards that you have in your average, like, blue-red deck or something like that, it wouldn't really make a lot of sense story-wise. So with Dungeons and Dragons, it's an entirely different kettle of fish, and you can actually use the cards from Magic the Gathering to help you plan around a campaign. Like just taking the inspiration from drawing random cards out of a deck and piecing them together, it will inspire you to come up with some sort of plot-based story that you can run your characters through. your players. So it is a resource that's always been quite useful for Dungeons and Dragons. Much like I use the Taroka deck, or some people use tarot cards and things. Hey, same. So yeah, it's quite interesting. Also, I've been playing Magic the Gathering Arena as of late. It's a free-to-play game that anybody can play. You don't need, it's not a pay-to-win game either. You can, through gameplay, you unlock additional cards and things, and you build up your decks and things. And I've noticed some immediate differences between the old version of the Magic the Gathering game, which I used to have via a Steam game, and this new one. This new one is very polished. A lot of the processes and stuff are streamlined and automated to help new players with the gameplay. Everything has got pop-up descriptions and things of what the cards do, what the powers of the cards are and things. There is, and it sort of saves you from the pain and heartache of, like, if you're disconnected during a game, you can reconnect immediately, and it will take you straight back into the game again between you and that player that was just there. So it's storing a little bit of information on the server of what's going on. This also limits the hardware requirements of whoever's playing the game as well, although it's really not a massively graphically heavy intensive game. The graphics though are very nice. All of the animations and stuff are very nice. It's just a really smoothly put together game, I think, and it really does. It really feels like you're playing Magic the Gathering with somebody across the table from you. I do wish there's a couple of things that Hearthstone does a little bit better, and there's some other things that, or Hearthstone, if you're so inclined. Hey, Kairos. There's some other things that Magic the Gathering does a lot better, and Hearthstone does some other things a lot better, like the missions and things on Hearthstone and the theme decks and things like that are better than Magic the Gathering, I would say. And also the conversation options and the interactivity of the table that you're sort of playing the cards at. Like, you can break things and stuff in Hearthstone, and like, it's quite interesting when you're sort of waiting around. You can sort of tap on things and move stuff around and clink crystals and bang on bongo drums and make a dragon egg hatch and things like that. That's all really good. It's superfluous to the gameplay, but when you're playing like 20 games in a row and the person that you're playing against is taking a long time, because there is a time limit on how long you can take to play the game, play your particular round of your hand. Magic the Gathering is a lot more complicated than Hearthstone. There's a lot more options for using instants and sorceries and global enchantment cards and things like that. Hearthstone is, I'm not going to say it's like the baby version of the game, because there is a hell of a lot of tactics in Hearthstone as well, but Magic the Gathering has a lot more complexity, and it's a lot more open to knowing the cards and the combinations and being very tactical. Like, I have pulled my ass out of the fire a few times just from knowing how to use the cards and really considering how I'm using them at the table, whereas Hearthstone is it's a lot more straightforward. But yeah, so Hearthstone's animations are a bit sluggish. The Magic one is, the system could do with, yeah, I mean, it's just starting out. Like, it's in a beta test at the moment. It's pretty polished for a beta test. Hey, Trevor, by the way. How's it going? Hey, Rich. So I'm very impressed with it. Like, I've been playing it for several days now. If you do log in there and you play up against an opponent with the lion head figure, and his name is Gluestick, that's me. That's you're actually playing against me. If you are somebody from the channel here, one of my subscribers, and you do come up against me, just say like "oops" 3 times in a row for no reason, and I'll know that it's somebody from the channel that I'm playing against. Hey, Panjay, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did. So yeah, I'll be playing on there quite a bit. Not too shiny. Shiny? Shammy. Shiny? Shiny? Remove curse and revivify should not be 3rd level. Oh, interesting. Were you guys having a conversation? Oh, I see. Always prefer Yu-Gi-Oh to Magic and the Gathering because they didn't ban old cards from play every few years until the power creep happened. Right, well, that's one of the aspects of Magic the Gathering which is quite often misunderstood. You can still play games like that, you know, privately and things. We're talking about official competitions and things, and that's because they want to keep a broad range of different play styles. Like, I love the idea of opening up a few decks and just making do with whatever cards that you have, because that really comes down to thinking on your feet and thinking tactically on the move, which is something I'm a lot better at than constructing a deck that I hope comes off perfectly, you know. And like Magic the Gathering, and unlike Hearthstone basically you never run out of land. The land balance is always the same. With Magic the Gathering, you can have too much land and you can have too little land. But I have won a game where I had only 3 lands the entire game, which was just crazy. But I was playing blue and white, which was luckily very, very lenient on me. So yeah, I may even possibly Twitch stream me playing Magic the Gathering at some point. Honestly, it's that much fun. And I might even like record some of the games that I'm playing, if that's possible or legal. I don't know. But it should be, because I'll just be basically screening what's going on in the thing, and then I'll be talking about some other topic like, you know, magic items or some such. Cursed items maybe. Hey AJ, does D&D have an equivalent to Davy Jones's locker, like a magical demi-plane that drowned sailors go to? There's realms of the gods like Deep Chassalis and others where there's gods which have the sort of domain or purview of people who have drowned at sea, but I don't think there's any sort of demi-plane magical Davy Jones's locker. Yeah. There are things like decanters of endless water and things like that. But yeah, it'll be relatively easy to make something like that. Like in my Eberron game, for instance, the characters encountered a magical, basically it's a cargo trunk that they opened up, and there's steps going down into a demi-plane, and it was actually a cross-planar plane that they connected to. So they went through this corridor, and they rolled I think it was a Constitution check, saving throw, and those who failed actually slowed down to half their normal speed, whereas everybody else was traveling normally, and from the slowed down people's perspective, everybody else sped up to twice their normal speed until they left that corridor. More 5e mechanics videos, really? Yeah, I'll give it a go. It's not really my specialty, but I guess if people like how I present things, then yeah, sure. As far as I'm concerned, it's not a lot. Like, there's a lot of stuff that's been covered by a lot of different YouTube creators and things, but I usually tend to think kind of creatively while I'm making those videos. You know, I can't really help but come up with ideas for the ways to use things. Magical healing during combat is a mistake. In Lord of the Rings, there was no time to heal Frodo until they got him to safety. That's true. Yep. Do atheists exist in the D&D world? Not so much in the D&D world, but they do in Eberron, where the gods are not present. And I suppose it would be possible to be somebody who was raised in the city of Sigil, for instance, and have no idea that gods really do exist. If you've never left that city, you'd never experience any sort of divine activity. Yes, I promised. That's true. I will be doing more. Rules for combat is not covered on YouTube. Well, so I did videos. I did a pretty good video on the mob combat rule. That saves a lot of time if you learn that one. I suppose I could do things on combat in general. Like as part of like making videos on encounters with specific monsters and things, I will end up talking about how combat works. For instance, the encounters video that I made when I was talking about the Bel Hanoth, that gives you a lot of information on how legendary actions and lair actions work. Yeah, Lord of the Rings is very low magic for a setting I think Gandalf had like what, light and heat metal, an amplify voice. Yeah, they still do on the fugue plane. There's a wall where non-believers go, and they get stuck in there. Hi Leonardo, please don't spam the chat, or I'll be forced to remove you. Magical healing on the spot ruins the intensity of dangerous combat. Yeah, that's true. Like magical potions, healing potions are perfectly fine. Or using inspiration to bolster people's health, or essentially giving people temporary hit points, I think is quite good. Yeah, I said hey to Leonardo. That's right, man. Everybody accidentally spams at least once. Find steed. Healing is very much ingrained in the system, yeah. Thanks, Grimlock. What else was I going to talk to you about? Oh, yeah, YouTube was down for an hour yesterday. Did you guys witness that? It was down globally for an entire hour or so. That actually cost me a small amount of money. Look, I was watching this. I checked out the statistics and things for my channel. And yeah, it was down for a significant period of time. Hey, Brandon. Which I don't think has ever actually happened before. I've never seen YouTube down like for an hour before. And I don't know what it is, but I have a hunch that it wasn't a hack. I think it was something they actually did to themselves. Yeah, no, if I use a roper one more time in my group, they're going to lynch me, honestly. I've used ropers too many times. I've used up my roper card. Yeah, it's very easy for the PCs to basically run away from combat and heal themselves using a short rest. Like a short rest is like 10-15 minutes or so. And they can spend their hit dice. Andy, I haven't done a public video on the Astral Dreadnought. I have talked about an Astral Dreadnought for my patrons though, which is not really fair. I should do a proper video on the Astral Dreadnought. I probably will in a while. But in the meantime, they're very bad. Like the lore in Mordenkainen's Tome of Foes is quite good for the Astral Dreadnought. It's an expansion on any of the lore that they had before. And I think it really, it's really hit and miss with 5th edition. Sometimes it's just a good adaptation of older versions of stuff. Sometimes it's really like, what the hell were they doing? Like with the Phoenix, for instance, everybody knows my attitude towards the Phoenix adaptation for 5th edition is, I think it's one of their worst ones. Whereas the Astral Dreadnought expansion of the lore of Astral Dreadnought is really good. Like whoever did that, they sure knew what they were talking about. There's only 25 of you in here. Not a good showing today. Maybe the notification didn't work very well. I think bottom up is one of the best ways to build a world. You can kind of do both at the same time though. Like you have a broad overview of what sort of world it is. Like if you're playing on a flat disk world, for instance, that's kind of an important top down. And it would affect the bottom up as well. Because the individuals would refer to things as like hubwid or rimwid and things like that. And it would affect the way that the days of the week and stuff. So broad overview, top of the world, like broad overview, top world as your skeleton, and then build into that organically from the bottom up. So you narrow down to the character's perspective and what they understand of the world immediately around them. And that sort of stops you from expositioning a lot to the players, which is really boring when you're first playing a game. You want to just concentrate on what the basics of the world are, the days of the week, how long a month is, what the climate's like, and generally speaking, just the geography around them. and then you zoom in on the characters and what's going on in their immediate vicinity, and what the community is like and the society is like. You build it up through their interactions. Like, it's perfectly valid at the start of a campaign to ask the player, you're dealing with this money lender, what sort of business does he do? And they're like, what? It's like, what business is this money lender in? What sort of industry is in this town? You ask them to fill in the blanks of the world for you, and they become invested in building the world with you. So after a few months or so, they will remember that leatherworking was what was the main industry of that town, or along this particular highway it was gold-topped fir trees, because you asked them to fill in the details. You can obtain quite a lot of different fey creatures as pets, yeah, and a lot. I mean, the vast majority of the ecosystem of the Feywild is not described. Like, there's got to be all sorts of fey creatures because it's a plane of bursting with vitality and life. So there must be 50 different types of foxes, 100,000 different types of finch. You know, there's just all these different types of animals which are never described because they just are not tactically important to the game. Axe poison! Hey Trey, how's it going? I'm drinking a coffee today which is pretty close to axe poison, I swear. I'm not a fan. I might have to drink through this stuff pretty quick. Yep, it's always pacing is one of the things which is hardest for a DM to pick up and learn. Like, how to actually stress the player characters without the players crying foul, essentially. Because they'll expect to be able to rest between every encounter. They'll expect to take long rests whenever they want. It's like, you can't camp here for 8 hours. Are you crazy? You're in a sewer. You know, you don't want to rest here for 10 minutes. It's terrible. Yeah, they seem to have a little bit catharsis. So that's one of my, like, they've seemed to be very specifically filling in some aspects of the Fae, some politically charged aspects of the Fae in particular, whilst ignoring broad swathes of basic general information for new players to the game. And I think it's kind of pathetic, really. Like, expecting people to just go back and find old versions of stuff. Like, for instance, in the Wayfarer's Guide to Eberron, they list all of these old source books. Hey, thank you. I love those Norwegian kroner. Thanks. Oh yeah, the Shield Dragon. The Shield Dragon would like to point out today that he actually has some coins. He's not a pauper dragon. He was quite offended last time by everybody saying that. Yeah, he has a hoard. He's just literally doing this for me. I assure you. Thank you very much. We'll extend the chat session by 3 minutes. What was I talking about? So yeah, the Fae. I think, yeah, Mordenkainen's Tome of Faes had a perfect opportunity in talking about the elves and things to flesh out more of the Feywild. They didn't go with that option. They wanted to reimagine the elves almost entirely, to being far more sort of Tolkien-esque in a way, which is okay. But on the one hand, the elves are far more Tolkien-esque than they've ever been in Dungeons & Dragons, and on the other hand, the hobbits, what the fuck is going on with the hobbits? The halflings with their tiny feet. What? Just because of some, like, legal issue they had decades ago with the estate of Tolkien. Maybe they should try again. Right, exactly. Yeah, Egypt was very tied in with their religion, because their religion was also part of their healthcare. So they, the pyramids and a lot of that sort of stuff was tied in. Like the course of the Nile went right in front of the 3 pyramids, and there were these echo chambers where they used sound vibrations to heal people. basically like a feng shui type thing. Also wanted to point out, if I could, on the subject of the shield dragon, he's just reminded me to actually show you what one of the Patron Blades looks like. So I have mentioned that I am actually a customer of Patron Blades as well. You'll see me link them in my description text all below, because whenever you follow that link and you get a subscription to Patron Blades, getting some of these very fine razors, I get quite a decent kickback myself. So I wanted to show you what they're actually like. This one I've been using for about, I don't know, 3 or 4 days. Oh, actually no, probably closer to a week actually. So they do actually last you a long time, particularly for me, because I don't grow a lot of facial hair, and the bits where I do grow, I don't generally trim it. So, but when I do shave, I like to have a nice razor, because yeah, and these are very good. So yeah, just wanted to demonstrate what they're like. Yeah, and you get a little pack of replacement blades as well. But this is probably going to last me a while actually. And there's 2 different subscription models. One is the one where you actually get the handle itself and a pack of razors, and the other one is just a pack of razors that come out on a regular basis every month or so. And it's very reasonable. It's like $10 or so, and delivered to your door. Sorry, which ones were those, Arthur? You're chill with small feet hobbits. Oh, no. I think the main problem is, one of my favourite D&D artists is Jeff D. And Jeff D did these really great, there's one particular iconic image of a couple of halflings, and they've got their furry feet and stuff, and he's looking real staunch and heroic, and they just don't look right. Like it's possible to have a large-footed hobbit who's buff as, like, an adventurer capable of wielding a longsword, and still be a hobbit, essentially, still be a halfling. And this argument that they had when they redesigned it, saying that the 3.5 hobbits looked too human. It's like, of course they did. You got the proportions all wrong, and you're already messing up the feet. They changed the sort of the shape of the skull, so it was more sort of flat on top for some reason. They just, I don't know, they just keep messing with halflings, honestly. There was nothing wrong with the original design of halflings in 2nd edition and 1st edition. Like, you look at a halfling from D&D Basic, the basic red box books, and there's no doubt whatsoever that that's a halfling you're looking at. Yeah, exactly, same. They are risk takers. Living in the wilderness of Dungeons and Dragons is dangerous. So yeah, elves probably have quite an attrition rate. So you're a fan of like a sorcerer, Trevor? Not needing a whole lot of spells, but basically being able to use those spells whenever they need them. I'm prone to agree, actually. I also like the idea of, what if a spellcaster can cast spells directly out of a spell book? Instead of having to sit and memorize the spells all morning, it just takes longer, but they can cast any spell. So essentially, almost like a ritual casting. You can't hear anything I'm saying. Crunchitize me, senpai. Hey, Joshua. Yeah, the heads were weird. He's waving a razor blade. My magic wand. Wingardium Leviosa. Muggus Smoothus. Why can't you hear anything I'm saying? Are you at work or something? Why am I even talking to you? Should be using portals. What about portals? Oh boy, that coffee. So those of you who missed this right at the start of the stream, there's like 41 of you in here now. Con Plus One is on the 3rd of November. That's a online convention, gaming convention. There's all sorts of games. There's a lot of people running games. This is a 24-hour gaming convention online. So Con Plus One has a website. Just search in Google, you'll find it. It's run by, organised by Becky Rose and Jason Green, who are in England, and all of the proceeds for it go to Child's Play charity to give kids in hospital or continuing care or hospices and things games and entertainment to help. And yeah, there's essentially it's 24 hours of panels, gaming, discussions, all sorts of stuff, and there's lots and lots of prize giveaways. I think they've got like 30 different companies which are donating products, some really good stuff. I've been a patron of theirs for a while, so I get to see a lot of the interviews and a lot of the products that they're giving away. And yeah, so those of you who were previously part of Brigade Con, this is essentially the evolution of Brigade Con, and they're hoping to top about a donation of about $5,000. They've already raised, before the convention even starts, they've already raised $1,000 for Child's Play charity, which is phenomenal when you think about it. So yeah, big shout out to Becky and Jason. Any tips on using Magic the Gathering cards in D&D? First of all, some of the instants and things like that can be used as just counters for things like spell slots and things, because they're pretty artwork, honestly. Like some of the red cards, beautiful, or the blue cards for spells, great. You can absolutely use any of the monster art and things to inspire you, saprolings and slivers, and yeah, just so much stuff, all the different types of goblin and things. You can use them as NPC illustrations. So you put them down on the table with like post-it notes with character information about this particular goblin or this merfolk or something like that. All of the artifacts and things can be actual artifacts that appear in your game. Yeah, for sure. And you can, if you pick out particular cards which speak to you, right? They just, like even land cards that inspire some sort of plot thought with you, or have some sort of emotional connection with you, make you think about something, and then you shuffle them up, get those collected, and then you put them down in a line and read through, and just ideas will just pour out of your head. I guarantee it. Use them like D&D tarot cards, plot point cards. Hey, William. So yeah. On the topic of Magic, how do you feel about components? I feel they should have made them more interesting, or just tossed a lot. Yeah, I tend to agree with you on that. I think they should have made them more integral to the use of spells, or they should have dropped them entirely. But they are very much tied in with the general lore of Dungeons and Dragons. So I don't know. Yeah, the small races do seem to be getting bigger and bigger. The one exception would be, and boy, this was sure pointed out to me, in 4th edition, the Pixies, for instance, we ran a campaign where it was all Pixies, all of the player characters were Pixies, and man, they kicked ass. Whew. Boy, oh boy. The ability to turn invisible, like even though the damage that they do with weapons is minimal, just the mayhem you can cause with a party full of stealth-equipped characters. Boy, oh boy. The interesting thing with halflings in the particularly Forgotten Realms lore is they were originally created by an entirely different god. So Yondala did not create the halflings. She took the halflings under her wing when they were abandoned by the original god. Hey, thanks, Mr. Werewolf Dude. Do you have any request or anything like that with that £5 donation? That's pretty good, man. Thank you very much. £5 translates into like $10 for me. Thank you. So I'm going to extend the live stream by a further 5 minutes. So yeah, Yondala didn't create the halflings. Halflings were created as essentially specialist war troops by the forces of good. Perhaps they were made in the image of goblins to fulfill the same sort of purpose, or who knows? And who knows how many halflings were originally created, or where they were originally created. They of course took over the land of Lurin eventually, and yeah. So Lurin got basically destroyed. If you're following the current Forgotten Realms timeline, a lot of people aren't, I've noticed. A party of pixie dust, yeah. Do I have the Encyclopedia Magica? Love those books. I think I might. I'll need to double check. I would treat the Planeswalking ability very much like the Dragon Marks from Ebron. So essentially, it's a racial feat. So you take it as a... So you progress your character to whatever level, and then they become that racial class of whatever race they are. Or you use it as... you basically select it as a feat, because it's a psychic ability to plane shift, essentially. How would you... Oh, you're talking... you guys having a conversation with yourselves. Fine. How would I use... I would keep components safe in basically oil-sealed, wrapped packages. Yes. On yeah, so all of the different races have got different origin stories in different worlds, which is interesting. Like a lot of people would think, oh, when did that race reach that world? Well, no, it's just that they were created differently on different planes of existence. No problem. Some species are better than others. Life isn't fair. A red wolf is a trash animal. That's why the grey wolf dominates all the ecosystems. Until the situation changes that benefits the red wolf over the grey wolf, it's currently dominant. Much like things are not favouring polar bears right now. But if the circumstances change and the entire north is flooded with polar conditions, then the grizzly bears will die out and become polar bears again. Are there any game systems with low or no magic? My friend is Christian. Yeah, for sure. You can play D&D with no magic. You can also play things like, let's see, Numenera would be a really good option. So that's like a far-flung future world where magic is essentially technology. So you can run it that way. You can also run, if you don't want to play a D&D game, you can play Traveller or anything like that, any of the sort of science fiction games. Absolutely. Yeah, so you can avoid that whole supernatural sort of thing if you want to. It's quite easy to do, actually. Your Eye of Newt got lost in the river. Yeah. Magic the Gathering does do a far better job at making things equal until you start getting green creature enchantments on red creatures. Oh, it's just nonsense. Eye of Newt is actually the seed of a plant. Really? Really? That's interesting. What plant? Because, like, newts are real. Warhammer Fantasy can be super disliked, except it does have that whole chaos element to it. And the evil races all have a supernatural origin to them. Wild magic items, yeah, for sure. Like, I like the idea of power crystals, for instance. Like, crystals that are essentially just oozing psychic power. and it just goes off like electrical static. What monster would you use? I use for a villain monster for Halloween. I'm planning a one-shot that has so many options. I would use something like a possessed object, like a ghost which is possessing an object and moving it around. Or you could use something which is a parasite which infects people and they can't tell who's got the parasite and who doesn't. Christians avoiding the supernatural is like C.S. Lewis writing about animals that don't talk. Yeah, there are many Christians who do have absolutely no problem with playing Dungeons and Dragons as it is, because there's a clear and obvious separation between fantasy and reality as far as they're concerned. It's just storytelling. So it's like telling of a Grimm Brothers fairy tale and not talking about magical slippers or, you know, the fairy godmother transforming a pumpkin into a carriage and stuff. It's clearly not. It's not real. But I respect the question, and I respect people's wishes to play games how they want, how they feel comfortable. Because I have friends who are that way inclined as well. And I'd rather they found a way to still enjoy the hobby without it causing an internal conflict with their faith. Because everybody's got something to contribute to the hobby. Even the trolls. Also, I've had quite a spate of people criticising older videos of mine and things like that. And I've come to the conclusion that young people don't know how to critique people without being insulting. So if you look past that and actually ask what is bothering them about something, it's like, you're an asshole and your sound's bad. It's like, oh, my sound's bad? Can you tell me how it would? Like, how so? It's like, you get used to it after a while. But yeah, this channel has grown so much thanks to people not liking something and then telling me what was wrong. You don't learn anything from everybody telling you you're good all the time. And if you can't take any criticism, you'll never improve. So trolls have their uses, even if just alchemically. Had some magic crystals that formed around planar portals that were filled with elemental energy and used as a power source. Yeah, I like that. Also, where you have uncontrolled elemental energy that is not controlled by elemental spirits themselves, there's a risk of demons getting involved, because demons are corrupted elementals. Really, they use the same sort of system. They use elemental souls. So yeah, elemental energy which is run amok out of control can overload and kill off anything in the natural world. Because if you think of the natural, if the prime material world is an equal balance of all the different elements, the humors, so to speak, if you have an overload of elemental fire, then it's going to cook everything. If you have an overload of air, it's going to overpressurize, freeze, do whatever. Magic Edition, please give a rant on NPC meme. I don't know what do you mean, Flying X-Blade? Use your words. In fairness, the sound is always kind of bad, sorry. What, on my videos? It's a hell of a lot better than it used to be. D&D is very Christian. It's kind of true. There's gods, there's demons, there's devils, there's heroes, there's angels. Well, yeah. What do you want? It's all in the Bible. There's behemoths. Yeah, everybody knows. Probably everybody knows people of faith who play D&D. They probably don't even know, what their person's faith is, because they don't mention it. For every one babbling fanatic, there's 100 people of faith who don't raise an issue at all. Who just get on with their lives. Who don't care whether you believe or not. Yeah, that's true. Dark Sun is a very good example of a low magic system where magic is evil. Magic is bad. It's very, very hard to, in a world... That's another thing, too, for people of faith. In Dungeons & Dragons, generally the trope, particularly within the whole D&D multiverse, is if gods aren't present, magic doesn't work right. Magic is not moderated. Magic is not able to be used beneficially. It harms, it disrupts, it causes imbalances. In Dark Sun, it kills the natural world, so you're left with a desert. And it corrupts those who use it, so sorcerers get turned into dragons, basically, after a long time. And in Kryn, for instance, the gods left that world and magical healing stopped, and people lost touch with mythology and things, and dark forces snuck in and took advantage. And then it became a war where basically ordinary people were fighting against supernatural creatures and the forces of darkness, and then the quest to bring the gods back, essentially. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot more aggression from... There's a lot more aggression... Sorry, Commissar, that comment got held because of profanity. But you said the 3 moons of Kryn were celestial bad people. True. That's one of the examples of things which causes my channel, my videos to get demonetized, unfortunately. So your comment didn't go anywhere; it just got held. There's a lot more aggression from atheists generally in the D&D community than there is from religious people. Religious people just basically tried to destroy the entire hobby back in the 1980s, but they weren't normal religious people. they were people that were using it as a vehicle to pursue their hysterical agenda. So yeah, quite different from people of faith. People of faith and religious fanatics who are pursuing social agendas are an entirely different kettle of fish, and I think we all recognize that from having to deal with that sort of attitude from people from other countries. I like the that in Eberron you can have that sort of dialogue. You can have that sort of game system. You can have that sort of story elements and things in place in your game where people don't know whether gods exist or not, and you have factions and wars of faith even within a particular church. So that's one of the really cool things about Eberron, is that you can run those sort of things. Again, Flying X-Blade, profanity. We don't use the W word. You guys got to find better lexicon of words to use. Honestly, I could rip shreds off people and never swear once. It's not my fault. The system's holding it themselves. Order versus chaos. Yeah, very much. Law versus chaos is very much a thread throughout all of D&D. Good versus evil is mainly the province of mortal creatures, really. Otherwise, for the supernaturals, for the immortals, it's law versus chaos. They're determining the fate of and structure of the universe. They don't really care about how good or bad something is, and quite often, and the possibility exists for a Rakshasa, for instance, to become a good entity or a bad entity. I like that idea. That's particularly true in Chinese mythology, where immortals can be corrupted and become evil, and they can be redeemed and turned back into mortals or good immortal creatures. But generally speaking, mortals, they have their fate. They're constructed to be what they are. They live and they die, and their souls pass on and things. Becoming an immortal from a mortal state is a form of corruption of the natural order. So it's very hard to be a good immortal in Chinese mythology, really. Oh, the Mind Flayer head. Yeah. Well, the person who won that prize never actually came forward. I might try it again at some point. Now that I'm set up in the new place, it's sort of butted up against me transitioning over to my new digs. But now I've got my studio set up. I can actually do some proper sculpting again, which everyone will see soon. I was just fossicking around there this morning. Yeah, I think Mimi, that's a good point. I think one of the slightly different aspect of that is that they don't have enough sense to understand what reality is and what is fiction. So they project that onto everyone else. So they basically they got triggered by things because they're scared of everything. And so with the whole satanic panic thing, they transferred that onto everyone else and basically thought that nobody could determine what is reality and what is fiction. So they get hyper paranoid about anything which seems even remotely like their faith or religion or whatever, because they saw it as a direct threat to what they use to determine their moral structure, their social structure, and their rules for living. So yeah, they were terrified of it because they didn't understand, and they couldn't understand. Asmodeus did nothing wrong. He sure as hell did do something wrong. Excellent. I like those, William. Drock. Slownecker. Or the Stom. The words from Judge Dredd. There you go. There you go, Flying Axe-Blade. You can use that word. It's legal in quite a few places. It's not the other one. Profanity is a tool of the inarticulate. You got a lecture when you were 22 from a lady at church about Harry Potter. Well, you know, dear. Yeah, I once had a pastor tell me that I thought too much, and I'd be happier if I just didn't think about things. That was the wrong thing to say to me. In fact, I've had numerous. One Christian followed me around town and said that intelligence was the enemy of faith. Hey, wow. Hey, AJ. Do you have any tips on how to start a long-running campaign? I have only ever played one-shots or short 3 or 4 session campaigns. Oh boy, yeah, I do. So first of all, you can take your time with drawing out plots and things over multiple sessions. The main important thing is to keep pretty good notes. Is this you, Mr. Flugger? Are you going to be running the campaign? Because yeah, what I suggest is that you don't think about the grand overall story per se, and because you'll end up railroading people into following a particular track of like assuming that the characters are motivated to save a princess or help a kingdom or something like that. So look at the player characters and what their backgrounds are, what possible ties they have with that game world, the background, what sort of embroilment. So the idea is you want to get them entangled with that world, and they get pulled along by their own motivations. So you start to key in on what the players want their character to do, how they want their character to evolve, and essentially that becomes the carrot on the stick that drives the entire campaign forward. And everything that you put in place is roadblocks along the way, but always getting back to what the player wants to achieve, essentially. So along the way to fulfilling their character's destiny, they save the kingdom, save the world, become nobles, handed land and title, get embroiled with these crazy rivals, or manage to accidentally insult a noble who sends assassins after them. The assassins' families get outraged that they got killed, and some idiot sorcerer summons a demon that terrorizes the town of the blacksmith where you were trying to get some armor made, so you need to go and fight a demon, and then it all starts to tie in together, and you've got all these multiple threads and things along the way. Whenever you as a DM think of like, oh man, I want to have a fight in a crystal cavern where loud sounds make icicles fall from the roof, and the players have to like dodge out of the way and things. And so you jot down the ideas of scenes like a movie that you want to put into play, bring to your players, and you find ways of just sort of modifying those and popping them in anywhere along that crazy tapestry of stories and interweaving plots and things which is developing during the campaign. So you stop thinking about it as a line like a video game where you go from this to this to this to this, to things are evolving naturally. They chaotically go in all sorts of different directions, and whenever it's appropriate, that's when you plop in your set piece adventure that you really wanted to bring to the characters. And the players sit back and go, great, we're in an encounter, combat, rah, 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 rah. And then when they get out of that, it's back into the plots and stories and interweaving things going on. And they're keeping notes and stuff as well at the same time you are, because you're writing down all the NPC names, little notes on particular character quirks, what their accent sounds like, just little notes that you can read yourself, and who they're associated with and what their motivations are, and draw lines between the different NPCs that know each other and things, different locations, particular notes about like 1 or 2 lines for every town or city, all that sort of stuff. And then you start developing things like trade routes and the iron trade in a particular area, or there's a shortage of silver over here and there's a trade war with worked tools because a certain payload of tools got stolen along the way, and it was an obligation to pay off some other clan of dwarves, and now they're fighting with each other. It all sort of plays into each other, and jungle cavalry. So I hope that answers a little bit. Should you attempt to create a list of new components? Yeah, I don't see why not. I'd love to have an alternate set of components for different spells, actually. I've never seen anything like that. Don't think, just obey. Oh, I see. Articulate speech is the art of poetically saying nothing while thinking yourself clever. Poor people give the best insults. It's kind of true. Mind you, you can insult people without them actually understanding they're being insulted, which is kind of evil when you think about it. I'd much rather know that I'm being insulted. That's true, Trevor. Fey creatures can be seen as evil to mortals because Fey don't suffer consequences for excesses. That's true. In many ways, Fey are... I'm starting to get the impression that Fey are actually more divine, more closer to the idea of they're influenced by thought as much as the vitality of an accentuated natural world. Hey, thanks, Mr. Werewolf Dude. Thank you very much. Boy, this is going to be a long stream today. So, like, with Fey creatures, like, this sort of became more aware to me when I was dealing with Baba Yaga and Baba Yaga's myth and legend and stuff. And that the very start of it, where the trappers or the hunters or whatever are moving through the forest, and they essentially walk into a maelstrom of Fey, which is moving through that area, which has a very dreamlike quality. So reality changes as the Fey world overlaps it, and that's the reason why the characters quite often forget everything when they leave the Fey, because it is like a dream that's manifested and become part of reality for a brief time, and they've transitioned into this dream world, and through that dream world they can go anywhere, go to all sorts of different places. If they walk through it and interact with it, it can influence them and change them. So maybe the best thing to do if you encounter the Fey is do nothing at all. Is that... Hey, Dragon Lord, is that Canadian dollars? I don't know what CA means. Orium Dragon, one of the coolest metal dragons. True. What do they call the Orium Dragon? That's got another word, doesn't it? Another title. Ah, it escapes me. So, yeah, the Fey is kind of dreamy. It's like they represent particular aspects of things. Much like demons represent the worst of things, the Fey can represent relatively ordinary things. Like you can have a a fairy of just thistles. It's an expression of the living animate spirit of thistles. Or that's why you have summer fae and winter fae. You can have sadness fae and happiness fae. You can have silliness fae. You can have nightmare fae like boggles and things like that, and bandahobs. Yeah, exactly, Mimi. They're a cross section of collected ideas and magic. Yeah. So it's like the Feywild is so vital that even thoughts are given form. And I suppose if you're a powerful entity that goes into the Feywild, you may actually influence things that are happening around you just by your thought. I mean, can you imagine an Empyrean, for instance, in 5th edition? Their emotions manifest as thunder and lightning and howling winds and things like that. And they can do that on the mortal plane of existence, on the prime material plane, which is relatively inert. It's like it's not supposed to be divinely morphic. You put them in somewhere like Arcadia, which is divinely morphic, they can do essentially what Dr. Manhattan did in The Watchmen, is just create stuff out of nothing. He could create an Empyrean could create a fortress out of bare rock in Arcadia. And if they go into the Feywild, their emotions may actually manifest as Fey entities. So if you upset them, you may spontaneously have a Fey creature which pops into existence, which is kind of less powerful because it's temporary. But the more people invest in that sort of emotion or that fairy tale or that fable, the stronger and stronger it becomes. And I hate to say it, but that's actually in line with traditional witchcraft, or even modern witchcraft, in that you can have memes, essentially. So think of Fae as magical memes. So they're manifested. So, yeah. Same sort of principle. Someone with manic depression would destroy the Feywild, possibly. Dissociative identity disorder, yeah. Yep. I haven't actually read a lot of the Dragon Age universe. I should. Isn't the loonies the $2? $2 Canadian dollars? Or is that a toonie? So a loonie would be $1. Either way, pretty good. Yeah, warp entities are very much like that as well. Like the warp powers were manifested through the death throes of an entire civilization of Eldar. So the Eldar essentially collapsing their psychic network destabilized the entire warp. So the hyperspace essentially became hellish. And these vast entities that may have been there all along, these psychic entities, became aware of the mortal plane and started playing with it. Yeah, the never-ending story. Another example of a Fey environment where the nothing is a thought virus. It's a thought destruction. I mean, that's crazy. It's or even The Princess Bride is a book. Things that happen in the book. What's that, DM Steve? It legalized what, everywhere? Good grief. Yeah, The King in Yellow is another good example. Vermont. Summer versus winter, autumn versus spring, sadness versus happiness, rainy days and Sundays. Yikes. Look out for your Tootsies, Mithridates. Hey, Dracos. How many people are federally? Wow. Might be time to move to Canada. Not that I'm that way inclined, but certainly an easy cash crop. Yeah, the Never-Ending Story is a little bit cringy in parts these days. The brownies from Willow are fantastic. They're some of the most memorable characters for sure. It's like you're crawling with brownies. I like that idea of the brownies being essentially so commonplace in that world of the Daikinis that they're like, you're crawling with brownies. Like they look at them as pests. And also that whole attitude of Dungeons and Dragons, like there's no conservation in Dungeons and Dragons. There's no such thing as PETA. Nobody thinks about like the fact that it's the last breeding Tarrasque. No. If it's a threat, they kill it. If it's got a hide, they skin it. If it's got useful components, they'll butcher it and sell it. The Daikinis. Pecks. Also, how many people call the halflings by their proper name in Forgotten Realms? The book's always better than the movie. Always. The Never-Ending Story ended. They lied. True. Spot prize to anybody who can tell me what the name for halflings in Forgotten Realms is. Maine did a year ago with a lot of red tape for recreational use, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. Yeah, I mean, there should be... You never call them halflings. There should be some control for it. It's exactly the same as... no, not hobbits. There should be... like, anybody can grow tobacco, for instance. It's not illegal to grow tobacco. It's just illegal to sell it. There we go. DM Steve wins. They're called Hin. Hin. Kenda is Dragonlance, the world of Kryn. The vertically challenged. That would be gnomes. Kenda in Kryn. Hin in Forgotten Realms. You could even call them the Lurinese. Demi-gnomes. Half-humans. Or humans, and the humans are actually dire humans. Short dude. The good folk. Yep, that's good. Stout folk. So the interesting thing is that they still call them Lightfoot and Stoutfoot halflings. And yet they've changed the feet entirely. So how does that work? I guess they don't call them fur feet anymore. Do they still even have furry feet? Bah. I think the difference is that it's implied that it was a lot easier in past eras of the Elder Empire because maybe the warp is so current and wild in current time. Yeah, well, it was the collapse of them which I think caused the wildness. Tall fellow, I know more. Yeah, that's true. They still have the Ghostfoot halflings. Proud feet. Herbrin. Oh, they are. While I'm out, I was having fun having a razor waved at me while the sound of the abyss raged in my ears. Take care, everyone. What sound of the abyss? You need to examine your sound system. Bye. For those of you who missed it, this is the Patron Blades razor that I was showing you guys before, that I use all the time, that I'm always talking about in my videos. Yeah, I imagine at some point there will always be there will probably be one or two states in America who never legalize it, and otherwise it'll be a patchwork of legal to quasi-legal. The disunited states of America. Isn't that true? the non-federal states of America. It's I respect the fact that in that respect, the state control versus federal control, America is still a republic. It is still a republic. It's not entirely a democracy yet, which you should be very, very thankful for. It's actually the more divided the states are between the different rules, the closer they are to the original dream of the founding fathers. I mean, from an outside perspective, forgive me for chiming in, but that was their original intention. Federal control is not what they intended, I don't think. Patron Blades, 3 blades, and the rougher and lotion. Yeah, so there is actually 5 blades on here, and they've got a smooth glide and a lubricating thing. So that's a sort of rubbery thing there, and the top one is more like a soapy one. And yeah, and it's got a really good range of motion, and they've got these little metal bits on the side there, which prevent the blades from catching on the side. So you can be it's very forgiving. Particularly for me, because I just shave all over the place. Founded as a democratic republic, I don't know, isn't it just a republic? Like it was never set up as a democracy per se. And yeah, it's an oligarchy now. But I don't know. I mean, it's not my place to say. I'm a foreigner, you know. Maybe one day, maybe one day, I'll even. I do intend to come and visit the States again. I want to go to a Gen Con. But I probably won't live in the States. I mean, I live in New Zealand. It's pretty nice here. Pretty nice. No chance, you're not on time. You're very late. The stream is going to end very soon. See you, Rich. Thanks for tuning in. Well, Robert, what can I say? I mean, it is what it is. It's funny you talk about the founding fathers. That was like 300 and something years ago. Three people ago. It's a young country. Not as young as my country. My country is a baby. But we're already firing rockets into the air and stuff. We've got a space program. All 5 million of us. 5 and a bit. And all of us New Zealanders infiltrated into all the countries around the world, spreading our filthy freedom. Our disgusting laid-back attitude. Brisbane. Don't you love how Americans pronounce every place in Australia? Brisbane, Australia. It's like Brisbane, where else? Like Sydney, Australia. Like, where else is called Sydney? Yes, if you keep donating, you can turn this into a 24-hour stream. It's true. If you really wanted to. Well, we'll keep going. EU is a low-key German empire. Yeah. Hey, at least they're taking over Europe the right way this time. Don't kill me. Don't hate me because I'm speaking the truth. I mean, there's more than one way to take over the world. You can do it economically. Like Japan has done very well for itself. It is an economic power. Japan has got the most freedom to travel with their passport than any other country in the world. I think New Zealand's only the 7th most free, or possibly tied 8th most free passport. So I can get into most countries around the world without needing to pre-apply for a visa or something. I can just basically show up and stay there for 6 months, which is great. Something like 150, 180 something countries. Norwegian krona, yep, that's right. The crowns. It burns, it burns. Sydney. Interesting you should mention that, Richard. Hey, Richard Neri. So in Eberron, for instance, there are states where where there's one particular part, one of the 5 nations of Corvair, where the undead are a lot more prevalent. And in Thay, the undead definitely do have voting rights. In fact, there's not a lot of definition between... There's no real loss of rights if you become a lich. And on Azeroth, they definitely do. I would love for Azeroth to be a D&D setting as well. That'd be great. Hey, Jacob. You missed quite a bit. What were we talking about? We were talking about... I was plugging Con Plus One, which is on November the 3rd. So that's a 24-hour online convention for gaming. So there's a lot of people running games, DMing games. They need players. Actually, they've got a lot of slots for players. So if any of you are looking for a D&D game, that's a perfect way to get involved. So that's a 24-hour gaming convention online. There's also panels and things like that. Yeah, I might even run a game for somebody. Who knows? Whoa, Mr. Werewolf Dude, you are being very generous today. Thank you very much. Wow, the Greed Dragon is very pleased with you. Can you feel his pride? It's radiating like heat. Yeah, well, I guess this stream is gonna run for a while. Good news, everybody who just got here. That's just been extended for 20 minutes. Because a pound is $2 for me. I'm gonna run out of coffee. The dead have voting rights in Chicago. Yep. So a lich could slowly but surely accumulate power, particularly for creatures which are... Cell service is patchy in New Zealand because we have a lot of mountains. Like I remember somebody, I think, it was on Facebook, Stefan Picorni, the sculptor behind Dwarven Forge, just recently visited New Zealand. He visited Hobbiton and gamed with some people from Weta Workshops and stuff. Yeah, somebody on his comment section said, why do you need to fly anywhere in New Zealand? It'll be like 5 hours to drive from one end of it to another and 2 hours to drive across it. Not at all. There's like one place in New Zealand where you could drive from coast to coast across the country, east to west, relatively quickly. But most of the country is divided up by large mountain ranges. So the Southern Alps, and yeah, there's central volcanoes and things like that. The North Island is a lot easier to move around, but the South Island has got a large mountain range which travels right down the west spine of it. So like you'd make a mistake if you decided to bike from Auckland to the Coromandel Peninsula to see Cathedral Cove, for instance, or Hotwater Beach, one of our natural wonders, because yeah, you'd be cycling over mountains. 5-month-old podling. Gelflings! What do you feed a 5-month-old? Mashed up vegetables and things? Souls. So the cell service is pretty good for the most part. There's a few places where it's patchy, but that's mainly because you're blocked by mountain ranges and stuff, and there's just no cell phone towers that have been built in that particular vicinity because nobody lives there. Whereas Old Zealand is in Holland. Zealand is in Holland because the Dutch, Abel Tasman, came over and visited New Zealand. He never actually landed here. There's a funny story behind that. So he sailed between Australia and New Zealand, and there's the Tasman Sea, which is named after him, Abel Tasman. And then he sailed into a place which is now known as Golden Bay, which is at the top of the South Island by Nelson, which is a apple growing region. And he was approaching the ship pulled up in this bay, which I think is an ancient impact crater or some such. And some local Maori were in a waka, which is a big dugout canoe, and they were paddling out to meet the ship, and the ship had a bunch of people who were on a longboat who were paddling into shore to basically land and say hello to people. And a drastic miscommunication happened, a cultural faux pas happened. So what happened was Abel Tasman's ship was paddling into shore, and the Waka was paddling out, and the warriors on board the Waka went and blasted out a sound with their conch shells essentially, and so Abel Tasman said, "Oh, they're playing us some music, so we'll play some music back at them as a show of solidarity and peace." Wrong thing to do. That was actually a challenge. So they were essentially going, "Are you here to fight or not?" And he went, "Bling, bling, 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 bling. Yep, we sure are." And so the warriors went, "Right." Out they come the greenstone hand axes and such. And so they started picking up war speed. And then the longboat got within a certain distance, went, "Oh shit, they're not here to be friends." And so they turned around as fast as they could and started paddling back to the boat to the ship as fast as they could. And then the Maori warriors caught up with them and went. So they called it Murder Bay, was the original name of that bay. And Abel Tasman then turned his ship around and left New Zealand as fast as he possibly could. So he never actually landed in New Zealand. He just surveyed a little bit of the shore and off he went. But he named the country New Zealand. Which I assume means land of murdering bastards. Who knows? Hey, thanks Anthony. Well, yeah, we're going to be streaming all day today. It's another 25 minutes. Wow. So yeah, cultural miscommunication. You've got so many chances for that for Dungeons and Dragons. Absolutely. Kinku, yeah. Would you ever do a video on magic plants? Let's see. I did one on the Shambling Mound, which is technically a magical plant. Pantjay, it's in Holland. It's not called Old Zealand, obviously. It's just called Zealand. It's like a province. It's like we've got a city called Christchurch. We've got a city called Dunedin. Those are different cities in other countries. Same thing with the states. The states have lots and lots of places which are named after other places. Paris, Texas. We'll be at this all day, he says in a British accent. We'll never get off the stream, I tell you. It's eternal. It's scary how easily I can slip into a proper English accent. The bunny plant. Oh, yeah. Exactly. Well, that's more of an aberration, really. It's an otherworldly creature. Came off a spaceship. New Zealand is filled with orc barbarians. That's... actually, not really. That's a horrible thing to say about white people. Oh, unless you're talking about others. Maybe. You love my DM inspiration videos. Cool. Thanks. Talk nerdy. Talk nerdy to me. Do not repeat, not ask the green dragon if your crocodile brutes were its cousin. Yeah, that's them's fighting words. You're gonna find yourself with a face full of acid. What else were those? Oh, I had a chat about Ravnica at the start of the stream as well as Magic the Gathering Arena versus Hearthstone. For those of you who are interested in what the comparison, because I play both. I've just recently started playing Magic the Gathering Arena and really enjoying it, and I was critiquing some of the differences between them. Like, I think it's a really good, like, I've started playing Magic the Gathering in preference to Hearthstone, so that pretty much sums it up. Although I do like the daily missions and things from Hearthstone, the progression missions of Magic the Gathering Arena are more encouraging of daily play, I think. And so in that respect, it's play to win, not pay to win. because anybody can win with any combination of cards, really, if you just play it right, because of that whole random draw aspect. Whereas Hearthstone, the drawing of land is automated, so you don't have that same element of chance where your hand of cards can just completely fail. You know the history of New Zealand from the Peter Jackson films? Oh, really? One of my players accidentally proposed to a married man by offering him gifts. His wife was not pleased. Yeah, exactly. Acid, thought greens blew chlorine and melted your lungs. If you get hit in the face with a concentrated blast of chlorine, enough to like cause you to choke and die, I can handle quite a lot of chlorine. I don't know about you guys, but I can sit in a room full of a pretty potent amount of chlorine and be absolutely fine. Whether that's some metabolic thing or not, I don't know. As for it burning you, I suppose it would. It's concentrated bleach, essentially. But, yeah. So green dragons pollute the environment, essentially. Same thing as black dragons. Black dragons can pollute an environment, corrupt it. It becomes unbalanced with acidicness. There was a D&D setting I want to do. Egypt, Rome, and Greece style D&D. Ancient world. You could do something like that with, say, you have a time travel campaign and you send your modern characters back in the early days of Dungeons and Dragons, where humans are essentially still cave people, and you're dealing with the original creator races. So you've got sort of the Empire of the Yuan-ti, where they became quite involved with humans in the beginning because they used them like livestock and like breeding potential. Plant clearing, really? Boiling oil, chlorine gas, yeah. Egypt would be awesome, particularly traditional Egypt. Confirmed for Super Soldier. Don't even get me started. I'm a freak in more ways than one. Yep. Rather fight a Tarrasque-sized Bodak or 10 Bodak-sized Tarrasques? 10 Bodak-sized Tarrasques. Yeah. The fate of... Oh, boy. Yeah, Bodaks are terrifying. Dying of fright and then raising as an undead spirit, perpetually terrified. Like, to the point of manic death-dealing hatred, whatever. Bodaks are... scary undead, very scary undead. They're psychologically scary undead as well as physically scary undead. Snow for about 2 days. What was that? Flying X-Blade? Snow for about 2 days, but any P tests you'll pass against drugs. You know, I've never had to do a like a workplace drug test or anything like that. As far as I know. No, I've never had to pee in a cup for anybody. I guess I'm just not in the professions where that's commonplace. Or maybe the professions that I was working at where it's now commonplace just weren't commonplace back then. Certainly when I was working in a steel loading yard, that would be commonplace now to have drug tests because you're dealing with heavy machines and multiple tons of steel. It's not something where you want to make mistakes. And when I was working at the casino, that's probably a place where they do drug tests too, actually, come to think. Mustard gas breath, yeah. For black dragons, for sure, definitely. I like the idea of dragons taking, particularly in 3.5, there were a lot of expansions of what dragons could do with their breath weapon, much like what sorcerers can do. So there were kind of meta breath powers that dragons could take as they sort of leveled up. Wakanda is a D&D setting. I suppose so. If you went with all the comic book stuff, the movies are a little bit blank on details. It's just like one city and one tribe that they describe. But there's got to be all sorts of stuff to Wakanda. I like the idea of that would be kind of like let's see, kind of like Chult, I suppose, and it's got a sort of African-esque basis of the culture, and particularly the appearance of the people and the people that live there. But of course, with Wakanda, you've got this advanced metal and advanced, alchemy and artifice and things. So it would be a combination of the island of Lantern in Dungeons and Dragons Forgotten Realms and the island of Chult, and then you've essentially got Wakanda. Or if you had a base of operations from the island of Lantern, which combined with the Chultan culture, you'd essentially create the seed of Wakanda. Particularly if they found some ancient meteorite of mithril or something like that, you could build a Wakanda in Forgotten Realms. Black Dragon's necrotic breath, yeah, for sure. I just had a thought of a dragon which basically uses the vomit and eat it again fly digestive system. It's disgusting. Where it goes blah, and breathes necrotic acidic mucus all over everybody, and then sucks it back up again and just strips the bones and flesh off everything. That's horrific. That's horrific. Blah! Difficult terrain everywhere, and now you're being pulled inside the dragon. Oh no, it's just sucking the bones off your flesh like a sucking moist chicken meat off a drumstick. Moist chicken meat off a drumstick. It's never that once sounded good. Now you'll never be able. I've doomed you for a KFC forever. So gross. Yeah. So you can have creatures which feed off negative energy for sure. Casmay with the half dragon template. That's the way, chance. Way to combine. Acid rain regional effect. Yep. I also like the idea of, how say gold dragons in a particular area or silver dragons can have an area effect which buoys up good creatures, good aligned creatures, so that they don't plummet to their death when they fall off things. So basically a feather fall effect that happens. Imagine if there was an evil dragon of some sort of axiomatic alignment type where there was an opposite effect. So you fall off something, you plummet to your death even at half the height. So it accentuates gravity and things like that. Like windstorms are tornadoes, and it accentuates the energy of any effect, physical effect in its area. Maybe that's something that a Mechanist dragon would do. An axiomatic dragon. In fact, that's something I should get onto. The next video that I'm going to be doing, though, is on the Glabrizu, which is the one I'm halfway through writing a script for right now. Durian. Yeah, I have. I didn't like it. I didn't like the texture. Stalagmites as weapons, certainly for stone giants. Although it would be artfully carved. But it's not actually that great as a material, honestly. If anybody's interested, I'm currently reading the Streams of Silver by R.A. Salvatore. I believe that might be the second book that he ever had published. The Halfling's Gem is the first book he actually had officially published, although it's not the first book in the Legend of Driss series. So Streams of Silver, I think, is the fifth. Looking forward to paint the Reaper Bones Wolf Demon. Looking forward to the video, AJ. Oh, nice. Good one, Steve. Maleficent. Take a drumstick, soak it in fluoric acid for an hour, then suck it into a vacuum cleaner. Show that to your players when they turn pale at the sight of a black dragon. Yeah, true. Oh boy, what was that? They call it the Piranha solution, which is concentrated sulfuric acid mixed with hydrogen peroxide very carefully. And what it does is the sulfuric acid carbonizes anything that goes into it, basically turns it into carbon. And then the hydrogen peroxide turns the carbon into carbon dioxide. So that's literally an acid where you drop something in there and it's gone, dissolves, turns into gas, just with a little bit of residue down the bottom. That's it. They call it Piranha solution because it eats organic material. Horrific looking stuff. Second published, 5th in series. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I liked the original book. I can see why he's a popular author. I actually read the first books of his that I read were the Cleric Quintet with Cadley and the Boulder Shoulder Brothers and all that sort of stuff, and Denier, the god Denier. Yeah, Icewind Dale trilogy. So that's what I'm reading right now. I've got the entire series of. I haven't got the first 3 books, Exile and stuff, but I've got all of them from the Halfling's Gem all the way to the Spine of the World. So I've got all of those books. I just bought them recently. Yeah, Robert, you should really see this stuff in action. There's videos of it on YouTube. If you search Piranha solution or Piranha acid or something like that, you'll see some interesting demonstrations. Are the souls of demons and devils killed in their own planes lost forever, or do they just go back to Lemures or something? Generally speaking, they're killed forever. Yeah. Particularly devils. Devils are killed. Demons are presumed killed. It may be that they just get reabsorbed back into the horrific maelstrom, which is Obox Ob, and then they have to find some way to regain their identity and release and spawn from abyssal corruption. But to all intents and purposes, they're destroyed. Like even being banished, they from the plane of existence, they are returned to the abyss and cannot return to that plane of existence for 100 years. So effectively, they're gone. Homeland, exile, and sojourn. Right. So those are the first 3, I believe. It is good reading. Like, people often forget that it's not just Driss in those stories. There's I like Driss as a character. He's very well imagined, and the sort of diary-esque monologues where he's talking about his feelings and his thoughts and stuff really evolves during the whole series of books. Like in the very first books, his worldview is very inexperienced in a way, because he's just been around 10 towns and patrolling around the borders and stuff, and is just coming to the terms with the fact that nobody's ever going to accept him, and he'll do these good deeds and things, but he's never going to be anything more than that dark elf, because he thinks that they're justified in vilifying him because of the reputation of his species, his race. And he's right in a way. And then as his legend grows, so too does his hope of being accepted as an individual. The original main character was supposed to be Wolfgar. I can kind of see that too. Bruno Battlehammer and Wolfgar's relationship is pretty interesting. And when they embark on this story here, that's Wolfgar leaving Icewind Dale for the first time. He spent his entire life both in the barbarian tribes and living with Bruno Battlehammer in the caves beneath the Cairn, 10 towns. So that's his first experience of the outside world. And actually, the events of the Halfling's Gem takes place over, what, like a decade or something? It's many years, actually. Yeah. We've got a lot of D&D lore, thanks to R.A. Salvatore. And there's a lot of things in there that actually I read it and I was like, that's not what that's supposed to do. Like, for instance, there's one instance, I can't actually spoil it for you, but there's something which happens with the figurine of Wondrous Power, his cat, Guinevere, which isn't supposed to happen. It's certainly not in any of the lore of what that magical item can do. So is it possible to have an evolved relationship because really he's a ranger with an animal companion which just happens to be a figurine of Wondrous Power. So it's an otherworldly creature, really, that he's got as a familiar sort of thing. So, yeah. I'm not sure why that comment of yours got held, Sam, so I'm just going to okay it. Hopefully it's alright. I think it's because of the subject matter of what you're talking about. Well, yeah, like when the demon in Ertu in the first novel encounters Drist. He's never met a good drow before, never in his thousands of years of experience. Thank you, Michael. Never-ending live stream. Wow, this is like 2 hours now. 2 hours. Thanks for your fantastic donations, everyone. Michael writes, AJ, I'm trying to build a campaign where the gods have disappeared, betrayed by one of the gods. Players unlock magic hundreds of years later. Ideas. So, if you want to draw off existing campaign settings where that sort of thing happens, the world of Dragonlance, Kryn, the gods have disappeared, they've left. And it has... The immediate effect is clerical orders and things like that basically lose their divine abilities to heal and do all that sort of stuff, use divination and stuff. And the world is left to its own devices, so that essentially evil forces move in and start to take over things. And there's these 3 moons and various other bits and pieces. So that's the beginning of when the gods first disappear. It immediately affects the faiths and the clerical orders and the ability for people to be resurrected, healed, that sort of stuff. So the first thing that you've got to deal with is that there's going to be a massive power shift, and people are not going to flock to the faiths of gods which are no longer there. They'll still worship those gods, but clerics won't be out healing the sick and doing things like that. So you'll have a resurgence of hedge wizards and alchemists and things like that who are promising all sorts of healing for people who could formally go and get their sight restored and things like that if they had enough coin. So obviously religions are going to start to become more desperate to keep control of people, so they'll shift to more political means. The second aspect is that magic starts becoming disruptive of the natural world, and you start to slide into Athos, the Dark Sun setting, where the gods have been absent for a long time and magic is completely uncontrolled, and it's possible for magic users to strip the living world and destabilize and unbalance everything. So the world becomes barren and harsh and horrible. And it starts to corrupt the magic users themselves. They're not protected by divine providence anymore. So magic actually transforms and warps them in the use of it. So you start having tables for random mutations and madness and things like that. And people who use magic are seen as dangerous and terrible people who are risking everything, the natural world, in order for power, personal power. So that's how I would run it. As for discovering magic, they may discover spells and things that the gods once protected people from using and things. So they may use rituals and things and get the magic out of them, but the spells are actually now really, really dangerous because the gods aren't there to protect anyone from them. Like if you use a wish, for instance, or you can suddenly use spells beyond 9th level in power. So it's possible to literally lop the top off a mountain and flip it over and float it through the air with a city on top of it once more. Drow live underground, shouldn't they be pale albinos? No, because they've only been that way for 10,000 years. They were originally dark elves on the surface. So they've always been dark elves. Also, they're sustained by Phasrus energy as well, which is quite unique. Hey, Gedron. Yeah, you're very late. We've been going for 2 hours, man. Waiting for you. Well, we can end the stream now. Gedron's here. If they were, they wouldn't be so edgy. I don't know. Yeah, other planes and interplanar interactions. Like you can see, there's always a... hey, Dicey. You can always... There's always magic users who are seeking more and more power and different easy ways to get to it. Like warlocks and... Well, warlocks in particular, they're always problematic because they essentially get handed magical power for nothing for whatever services they offer. It's okay, Kedron. We're going to be here for at least another 10 minutes, 15 minutes. And then you've got sorcerers, of course, who are living conduits of magical power, and they basically can't stop but casting spells and that sort of thing because it's part of them. They're a font of magical power. 5,000 years of farming was enough to make Europeans pink. No, not necessarily. Like isolation of limited groups of populations is what made people look a particular way. There's only a small amount of environmental effects. But generally speaking, people who are in the northern hemisphere didn't get as much sunlight, so they didn't need to adapt a lot of melanin in their system. So, yeah. I'd be more interested in, like, if orcs had problems with how each other looked. Ooh, you've been eating too many vegetables. Your tusks are blunted. You're eating muffins. Great. Well, it was many generations of farmers is like 4 generations of elves. Exactly. How many generations of drow was 10,000 years? I mean, drow do have quite a horrific attrition rate, and they don't live as long as other elves, generally speaking, because of their society is murderous. But the drow matrons decide who to mate with, and the matrons live for a long time. Don't forget, males don't have any say in who they mate with in drow society. Takesis, Theft of Kryn, Takesis or Tiamat, Dragons of Summerflame. A question of natural selection. Well, when you think about it, natural selection is a misnomer. It's natural survival. It's also a luck of the draw. Because things can kill off populations of creatures no matter what their adaptations are to the environment. Sometimes it's just pure luck. Sometimes evolution isn't for the best. It's killed off everything. It's killed off things which would have been better adapted to the environment, but just, you know, they were not resistant to a particular virus or something like that. So it's a lot of it is pure randomness. Pale people get sunburns more easily in tropics. Yeah, that's true. One interesting thing is, like, I've noticed with New Zealanders, we live very close to the hole in the ozone layer, so we get some terrifically harsh ultraviolet light. So I could go outside. It's getting close to summer now, so I've got to start thinking about how long I spend out in the sunshine. But I've been out there in my entire, you know, we've been in this, my family's been in this country for 145 years, working away in our harsh sunlight. And if I go to the States, and I know this for a fact because when I was over in the States, there was a tour group that I was with, and they were representatives of all sorts of white people from different countries around the world. There was French and Germans, Swiss Germans, and there was Australians, there was English people, there was a couple of girls from Euston, the Outer Hebrides of Ireland. Or is it Ireland? Yeah, they spoke Gaelic as their first language. Anyway, so we were out on Venice Beach for the entire day, and at the next day or the day after that, it was a spectrum of sunburn. With me, no sunburn whatsoever. I could have stayed out in that sun for days in the States and not been sunburned because I'm adapted to harsher ultraviolet light, even though it's got nothing to do with how much melanin I have for some reason. So it's not entirely that. Yeah. Europeans, yep. There's only a couple of population groups which don't have Neanderthal DNA, which is Australian Aborigines and Sub-Saharan Africans, I believe. Could be wrong. Could be that early wizards copied sorcerer spells, but it's more likely that they studied spells of other species. So drow, elves, and they would have taken it from giants and dragons. That's why a lot of magical script is draconic. DNA definitely does resist changes, yeah. International White People Brigade. That's probably not... I think the stream just ended, or am I wrong? Sorry about that, everyone. My stream just went offline. Hi. Yeah, sorry about that. I might have to end the stream. Something's disrupting things. As far as I know, my internet connection should be fine, but for some reason it just cut out there. Happens to the best of us. Glitch in the Matrix. You're playing Sims? People still play The Sims? Good grief. Mind you, what can I talk? I'm still playing Magic the Gathering. Here comes another hour. No, we'll end it at 12 o'clock, everyone. So we've got 7 more minutes of chatting and blather. Yeah, Lolth and some Black Dragons conspire to spit on the server. Well, Aborigines certainly are amazing at travelling across the world. They are so well adapted to just travelling through the wilderness. It's unbelievable. And yeah, the interesting thing is, though, is that in order to have travelled that distance, and they would have had no interaction with Neanderthal people at all, I guess. Because essentially the Neanderthals just basically interbred with Homo sapiens sapiens and became modern humans from the European stock and Asiatic stock and various other groups. Thanks, Michael. Kedron, we're just basically going to end it in another 5 minutes or so. 2 hours is quite a hefty stream for a day. It's been a pretty good one from my point of view, though. I've had a great time. Yeah, well, there's not a question of believing in convergent evolution. It definitely happens. Like, you look at ichthyosaurs and dolphins, and they look pretty similar, and like tuna and things. Or you look at the marsupial saber-tooth, and you've got there's a saurian dinosaur saber-tooth that evolved, and then you've got the mammal saber-tooth which evolved. There was a marsupial lion, and of course the lions of Africa and India. Lich for Supreme Court. Oh, right. You had a legendary barbarian? That's interesting. Hi, by the way, Jake. Lich for president. Who says you don't have a Lich for president right now? Yeah, hobbits existed in Indonesia. Yep, that's true. Tiny people. Boy, that would have been freaky, you know, encountering them as a living culture. Makes you wonder what their culture would have been like. Oh, as a possessed barbarian. Have you seen Donald Trump's parents? Oh my god. His dad was definitely a lich. No doubt about it. Nobody should have a skull and face of that configuration and be a normal living human being. Die hobbits as humans, yeah. Be smarter. Yeah, Court of Liches does make sense. I mean, the elves of Eberron have got a Court of Liches, essentially. Good liches. Too fat and sweaty to be a lich. Maybe he's wearing a suit of, like, to look normal. Soros. The Skelligates. The Skelligate of... The Skelligate of Zilago has the floor. My fellow congregation. William, time will tell. History will tell us a different tale, I'm sure. The Belnorn, that's it. Yep. Baelnorn. Hello, Jake's Hobbit. Just a bit more Neanderthal than the rest of us. There was this guy who delivered fridges back in the town where I grew up, whose nickname was Fridgie, and yeah, he was very much Neanderthal, like no doubt about it. The Neanderthal genes were very strong in him. Can lizards be president? I don't see why not. No reason to discriminate against Zuckerbergs. Oh, well, it's time to wrap up this stream, everybody. Boy, oh boy, what a long one. Like an Edgar suit. Donald Trump and the intern. You put the lotion in the basket. It's the greatest basket. It's the best lotion ever. My skin is like the best skin. Thanks, Jake. Thanks, Stephanie. Thanks, Mimi. Hey, Gabe. Thanks, William. Mithridates, everybody. Dragon Lord. Been with me the entire way through, man. You've been on here for 2 hours. Good grief. Thanks, Mr. Werewolf Dude. Huge thanks to you. I will keep smiling. Zuckerberg, I don't think he's a mind flayer. He's probably an agent of Thune. I mean, when you think about it, there's definitely some cyborg going on there. We know that he uses enhancements, particularly on his seat. And the way he drinks water is a bit creepy. It's like... Maybe. First orange president. Such diversity. Such diversity. Okay, everybody. And that's it. 1 o'clock here in New Zealand. That means it's like 9 o'clock over in the States. We will conquer the universe. Absolutely. This galaxy is ours until proven otherwise. Check out NPC Meme. I will, Flying X-Blade. Thank you. And I will catch you all later. Another weekend stream coming up. Your Saturday, my Sunday, 7 PM. Catch me if you can. Otherwise, I will be around making videos, uploading videos, and occasionally popping into Discord to chat with people. And if you're on Magic the Gathering Arena and you match up against somebody called the Glue Stick with the lion character as my my icon, and if you type in "oops" 3 times, I'll know it's you. Thanks a lot, everybody. Catch you later.